fraud, lies, and murder. H. Holmes was known for it all. He is still remembered as one of the most cold-hearted criminals in American history. Today, we uncover the story of a man whose charm hid a shocking truth. Born on May 16, 1861, Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, or HH Holmes, was an American con artist and serial killer active from 1891 to 1894. He had committed numerous crimes, including insurance fraud, forgery, swindling, multiple illegal marriages, horse theft, and murder. Holmes was famously called the Beast of Chicago, the Devil in the White City, and the Torture Doctor. His most infamous crimes occurred in Chicago during the 1893 World's Fair. Early life. Holmes grew up in a strict household in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. He showed an early interest in medicine. While studying at the University of Michigan Medical School, he honed his dissection skills and began committing insurance fraud by stealing corpses and faking deaths for payouts. In August 1886, Holmes moved to Chicago and began using the name HH Holmes. He got a job at a drugstore in Englewood owned by Elizabeth Holton and eventually bought it. Contrary to popular belief, he did not kill Dr. E.S. Holton. In 1887, Holmes started building a two-story structure across the street, with apartments on the second floor and retail spaces, including a new drugstore on the first. He refused to pay architects and the steel company, leading to legal disputes in 1888. In 1892, he added a third floor, claiming it would serve as a hotel for the upcoming World's Columbian Exposition. Rumors suggested he built the hotel to lure and kill tourists, selling their skeletons to medical schools. While Holmes did sell human remains, he obtained them through grave robbing rather than murder. Sensationalized reports described the hotel as a murder castle, with hidden torture chambers, trapdoors, gas chambers, and a crematorium. But these claims were false. Some accounts claimed the hotel was a maze of over 100 rooms, with doors leading to brick walls and dead-end staircases. In reality, the third floor was small and unfinished. There were hidden rooms, but they were used to conceal furniture bought on credit. Holmes admitted to killing people through suffocation, chloroform overdose, gas poisoning, starvation, and even burning victims alive. The hotel was set on fire by an unknown arsonist after his arrest, but was later rebuilt and used as a post office until 1938. Holmes also owned a one-story factory, supposedly for glass bending, but it was suspected to have been used to destroy evidence of his crimes. Presumed murders. Holmes had a mistress, Julia Smythe, wife of Dr. Lawrence Connor. Connor worked at Holmes's pharmacy but left after discovering the affair. He moved away, leaving Julia and their 5-year-old daughter, Pearl. Julia stayed with Holmes, but both she and Pearl disappeared on Christmas Eve of 1891. Holmes first claimed Julia left to visit a dying sister, then later said she had fled from her husband. Eventually, he admitted she died during an abortion, a procedure he was not skilled in. He also admitted to poisoning Pearl to hide Julia's death. Later, a child's partial skeleton, possibly Pearl's, was found in Holmes's cellar. Her father testified against Holmes at trial. Another woman, Emeline started working for Holmes in May 1892. She was last seen in December 1892. Holmes told her parents she had married a man named Robert Phelps. Authorities suspected she had become pregnant by Holmes and died from a failed abortion. Her empty luggage was sent back to her mother. Her skeleton was later found at a Chicago doctor's home. In early 1893, 24-year-old Wilhelmina Minnie Williams moved to Chicago. Holmes claimed they met at an employment office, but they had likely met years earlier in Boston when he was using the alias Harry Gordon. He offered her a job as his personal stenographer, and she accepted. Holmes convinced Minnie to transfer the deed of her Fort Worth, Texas, property to Alexander Bond, one of his fake names. In April 1893, she completed the transfer. Holmes was the one officially witnessing and certifying the document. He later transferred the deed to Benjamin Pitezel, using a fake name, Benton T. Lyman. likely to cover his tracks and avoid being linked to the property. In May 1893, Holmes and Minnie rented an apartment in Chicago's Lincoln Park, posing as husband and wife. Minnie's 18-year-old sister, Anna Nanny Williams, came to visit. On July 5, 1893, Anna wrote to their aunt, saying she planned to travel to Europe with brother Harry. She assured her aunt that she no longer needed to worry about her, as Holmes and Minnie would take care of her financially. After this letter, neither Minnie nor Anna was ever seen alive again. Holmes later used Minnie's name in fraudulent schemes, suspected murders. On April 17, 1891, 68-year-old John DeBruay, someone Holmes owed money to, collapsed and died of apoplexy in the Castle drugstore. A witness reported that Holmes had poured a black liquid down his throat just before he died. At the time, foul play was not suspected. In 1895, it was discovered that DeBruay had life insurance, and Holmes had profited from his death. In 1891, Emily Van Tassel disappeared after working at Holmes's drugstore. Holmes later mentioned her in his confession. In 1897, her name was listed among his suspected victims, and her mother believed she had been killed. Dr. Rustler, who had an office in the castle, went missing in 1892. Holmes later confessed to his murder. That same year, Kitty Kelly, a stenographer working for Holmes, also disappeared. John Davis, from Greenville, Pennsylvania, traveled to the 1893 World's Fair and vanished. In 1920, he was legally declared dead. Another man, Harry Walker from Greensburg, Indiana, disappeared in November 1893. He had reportedly bought a $20,000 life insurance policy, making Holmes the one who would get the money. In June 1894, Holmes and his associate, Benjamin Pitezel, took George Thomas to a Mississippi swamp along the Tombigbee River, where they killed him and disposed of his body. Holmes later confessed to this murder to his second wife. Milford Cole, from Baltimore, vanished in July 1894 after Holmes sent him a telegram asking him to come to Chicago. Another possible victim was Lucy Burbank. In 1895, investigators found her bank book along with human hair inside a chimney flue at the castle. Pitezel killings. While working in the Chemical Bank building on Dearborn Street, Holmes befriended 38-year-old Benjamin Pitezel, a carpenter with a criminal past. Pitezel was showcasing a coal bin he had invented in the same building. Holmes made him his assistant in various crimes. In July 1894, as insurance companies were pressuring Holmes for arson charges, he fled Chicago and went to Fort Worth, Texas. There, he tried to construct another building on property he had inherited from the Williams sisters. As before, he refused to pay workers and suppliers. That same month, Holmes was arrested in St. Louis, Missouri, for selling mortgaged goods. He was quickly bailed out, but during his time in jail, he met a convicted outlaw named Marion Hedgepeth. Holmes shared a plan to scam an insurance company out of $10,000 by faking his own death. In exchange for a $500 commission, Hedgepeth introduced Holmes to a lawyer named Jephthah Howe, who found the scheme clever and agreed to help. However, the insurance company became suspicious and refused to pay. Instead of pursuing the claim, Holmes created a similar plan, this time using Pitezel as his victim. Pitezel agreed to fake his own death so his wife could collect a $10,000 life insurance payout, which he planned to split with Holmes and lawyer Jephthah Howe. The plan, set in Philadelphia, involved Pitezel posing as an inventor named B.F. Perry and then supposedly dying in a lab explosion. Holmes was meant to find a corpse to stage the death, but instead, he murdered Pitezel on September 4, 1894. He knocked him unconscious with chloroform and then set his body on fire using benzene. In his confession, Holmes suggested Pitezel was still alive when he applied the chloroform, but forensic evidence later revealed that the chloroform was given after death. This was likely to make it look like a suicide and protect Holmes from murder charges. The insurance company, unaware of this detail, paid Holmes the full amount, as Pitezel's real body was used. Holmes then deceives Pitezel's wife, Carrie, convincing her to let him take 3 of her 5 children, Alice, 13 years old, Nellie, 9 years old, and Howard, 7 years old, into his custody. He took them on a journey across the northeastern U.S. and into Canada while keeping their mother on a separate but close route. He lied to Carrie, telling her that Pitezel was alive and hiding in London, and also misled her about her children's whereabouts. At one point in Detroit, just before crossing into Canada, Holmes and Carrie were only a few blocks apart, though she remained unaware. Holmes was staying at another location with his wife, who had no idea about his crimes. On October 25, 1894, he murdered Alice and Nellie Pitezel by locking them in a large trunk. He drilled a hole in the lid, inserted a hose, and connected it to a gas line, suffocating the girls. He then buried their naked bodies in the cellar of a rental house at 16 St. Vincent Street in Toronto. Philadelphia detective Frank Geyer was assigned to track Holmes and find the missing children. In June 1894, he followed Holmes's trail and discovered the decomposed bodies of Alice and Nellie buried in the Toronto house. Geyer described the gruesome find. The deeper we dug, the more horrible the odor became. At 3 feet, we found what appeared to be a human forearm bone. Geyer also found unsent letters from the children, leading him to investigate further. He followed Holmes's movements to Indianapolis, where Holmes had rented a house in the Irvington neighborhood. There, he bought drugs from a pharmacy and had knives sharpened at a repair shop. He used these to kill and dismember Howard Pitezel on October 10, 1894, before burning his remains. The boy's teeth and bones were later found in the chimney of the house. Execution and confession. Holmes's crimes came to an end when he was arrested in Boston on November 17, 1894. The Pinkerton National Detective Agency tracked him from Philadelphia and arrested him on a warrant for horse theft in Texas. In July 1895, after Alice and Nellie Pitezel's bodies were found, Chicago police and reporters investigated Holmes's Englewood building, known as the Castle. Despite sensational rumors, there was no solid evidence to convict him of murders there. Investigators found only circumstantial evidence, a piece of human bone, possibly from Julia Connor, child remains, possibly Pearl Connor, a burned gold watch chain and dress buttons, likely belonging to Minnie Williams, and a tuft of human hair in a chimney flue. In October 1895, with no strong case in Chicago, Holmes was instead tried in Philadelphia for the murder of Benjamin Pitezel, where the evidence against him was clear. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. By then, it was clear he had also killed the 3 missing Pitezel children. After his conviction, Holmes confessed to 27 murders across Chicago, Indianapolis, and Toronto, along with 6 attempted murders. The Hearst newspapers paid him $7,500 for his confession. While in prison, he wrote about how much his face had changed since his imprisonment. On May 7, 1896, Holmes was hanged at Moyamensing Prison for Pitezel's murder. He remained calm and friendly until the end, showing little fear. However, he requested that his coffin be encased in concrete and buried 10 feet deep, fearing grave robbers would steal his body for dissection. His execution did not go as planned. His neck did not break, and he was slowly strangled, twitching for over 15 minutes before being pronounced dead. Burial. After his execution, Holmes was buried in an unmarked grave at Holy Cross Cemetery in Yeadon, Pennsylvania. In August 1895, a fire damaged the castle. Witnesses saw 2 men enter the building at night and flee before a series of explosions set it ablaze. Investigators later found a half-empty gas can at the back steps. The building survived the fire and remained in use until it was demolished in 1938. In 2017, allegations surfaced that Holmes had escaped execution, leading to the exhumation of his body for testing. Janet Monge conducted the investigation from the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. Because Holmes's coffin had been encased in concrete, his body had not decomposed in the usual way. His clothing remained almost perfectly preserved, and even his mustache was still intact. Forensic examination confirmed the remains belonged to Holmes, as his teeth matched dental records. After the identification, his body was reburied. Holmes met his fate eventually, but his crimes left a lasting mark on history. His elaborate schemes, deception, and cold-blooded murders continue to intrigue true crime enthusiasts. The infamous Murder Castle remains a chilling reminder of his twisted mind. Though justice was served, his dark legacy endures as a cautionary tale of greed and evil.